The business we decided to focus on was Jumping Java Coffee House, located in downtown Grand Haven, Michigan. They have been in business since 1998 and sell a wide variety of products. Jumping Java's menu consists of 21 coffee specials, most of which are frog themed. They also partner with local businesses to help sell their products and specifically partner with Magnum Coffee Roastery for their coffee products. Magnum Coffee Roastery owns and operates Cafe Trading, which helps source coffee from South and Central America, Indonesia, Africa, and beyond. Magnum Coffee Roastery has several environmentally friendly certifications, such as having a Rainforest Alliance certification and being considered bird friendly by the Smithsonian.
The purpose of our project is to assess any damages done to the environment when it comes to the farming of coffee beans. Specifically, this project addresses the damages done in order for Jumping Java to be a successful coffee house. Overall, however, you could apply the numbers given in this presentation and project to the wider company, Magnum Coffee Roastery. Since Magnum Coffee Roastery works with more coffee houses than just Jumping Java, you would take the environmental damage number given and multiply that by the coffee houses served to determine the total environmental damage.
For our organizational focus, we'll be focusing on where Jumping Java sources its coffee products. For our value chain boundary, we'll be specifically looking at upstream operations that occur outside of Jumping Java in Grand Haven. For example, assessing the issues that occur upstream and what has the largest potential risk. Doing so by looking at the suppliers who essentially provide the coffee products to Jumping Java, which is Magnum Coffee Roastery. From the value perspective, we will specifically be looking at societal value by determining the outcomes for society, by looking directly at environmental externalities and assessing net impacts to society. Or another we could look at is personal value from knowing when you buy your coffee from Jumping Java, you are spending your personal resources on a local business. Impacts will be assessed by examining the qualitative impacts of local people where the coffee is directly grown and harvested and how much the growing operations cost. Some technical issues that Jumping Java would have to deal with is business image and the ethical violations of their trade partners due to the fact that coffee growing is very similar to the growing of cocoa, which faces more scrutiny as time goes on. Due to these growing operations not being known for being the most ethical sound in the world of human rights. Business image could also be an issue, especially if Magnum stays with the farms caught violating these social ethical issues. Some key planning issues to take into consideration would be how to assess the societal impacts of how the coffee is grown and what there is to do to change the methods of how it is grown to make it better.
The main impact we focused on was the lack of carbon storage caused by deforestation for the coffee farm. In order to figure out how much land a coffee house requires, we determined that the average coffee house sells 230 16-ounce cups of coffee a day. This means that daily they sell 3,680 ounces of coffee a day and 1,343,200 ounces of coffee a year. According to bettercoffeeathome.com, a full-grown coffee plant can produce 270 ounces of coffee per harvest. This means that if a coffee plant can produce 270 ounces a harvest and a coffee house needs 1.343 million ounces a year, they would need just shy of 4,975 plants. BetterCoffeeAtHome.com says each plant needs 18 square feet of space to grow properly. With a total number of 4,975 plants and 18 square feet per plant, we know that the average farm would need 89,550 square feet of space. Converting this to hectares would give us 0.85 hectares, or 2.1004 acres. We know that under the Biden administration, according to the Washington Post, the social price of carbon has been raised to $51 per ton of carbon, and according to urbanforestry.com, that an acre of forest can store up to 2.5 tons of carbon. With the farm being 2.1004 acres large, we know that 5.251 tons of carbon storage is lost, meaning that $267.80 of damage is done to the environment per coffee house.
For step 5, measure impact drivers, our organizational focus is looking at coffee beans with a value chain boundary of upstream, looking at the land needed for growth, material, natural, capital impact drivers, and or dependencies. Impact drivers would be land size and like acreage, and dependencies would be the forest, people, and the water. We will be looking at quantitative indicators, which is looking at specific resources that are being consumed for the production of a product. In our circumstance specifically, we will be measuring the area planted in coffee crops for Magnum Coffee Roastery, who is the coffee source for Jumping Java. Magnum Coffee Roastery sources their coffee from South and Central America, Indonesia, and Africa. We will be measuring this data by collecting secondary data from reliable sources. According to the bettercoffeeathome.com, the average coffee producing plant can produce 270 ounces of coffee per harvest. They also say each coffee plant needs about 12 feet per each row and 6 feet between each plant, which means each plant takes up 18 square feet. This essentially means that if the average coffee shop sells about 230 16-ounce coffee cups daily, they sell 3,680 ounces a day and 1,343,200 ounces a year. If coffee plant produces 270 ounces a harvest, they would need roughly 49,000, which will now refer to as 4,975 plants. If each coffee plant requires 18 square feet, that means they would need around 90,000 square feet in total, which translates to about 0.83 hectares or 2 acres of land, which is what would be required on average for Jumping Java to run yearly.
Given the data from the last steps, this could affect the business drastically. If they choose to switch sourcing, they have a couple of different options. If they were to create a new plant entirely, that means they would have to purchase at least 2.05579 acres of land in a foreign tropical environment. In doing this, they would have to deforest the area most likely and would be very costly to them, as they would have to locate land, labor, and resources, as well as the necessary time for the new area to develop. The other option for Jumping Java would be to change where they source their product from. This could still be an expensive change for them, but it could also provide a cheaper solution while adding benefits to Jumping Java and the surrounding environments of where they source their beans from. Another change needed to be measured would be the method of harvesting and processing. Natural processing is a much more environmentally friendly option as it doesn't require any machinery, but it is labor intensive for the people working on it. Wash processing is a good, efficient method that doesn't require a large amount of physical labor due to it being machine and water oriented, but it does require machinery and can be less desirable for eco-friendly options. Coffee farmers are only paid after the beans are harvested, processed, and exported. The typical coffee worker makes $1 to $3 a day, which is way below the poverty line. These places are able to do this because they provide free housing on the farm and food for them. So depending on how they choose to source their beans, they could spend a lot of time and money just to keep the farm going. For step 7, looking at the value and dependencies for Jumpin' Java can be looked at in 2 ways: the costs and benefits. Jumpin' Java has a great impact on its local environment that it may not even know about. The coffee business as a whole is a billion-dollar business. Being part of that helps contribute to its local area in a multitude of ways. Their current source for beans, Magnum Coffee Roastery, is a viable business to proceed with, as they have around 9 different certifications, 5 of them being environmentally friendly focused, which is a huge benefit economically and environmentally to Jumpin' Java. Magnum Coffee Roastery is also Fair Trade certified, which means they do not take advantage of the farms they source their beans from. They, in turn, pay a fair market price or even more to these farms to help provide better standards of living for the workers on these farms. Dependencies or costs for Jumpin' Java are that because they don't source them for themselves, they go through the company MCR. Depending on the prices and from what it looks like between the multitude of different grinds as well as the private labeling costs, seems to be relatively expensive, yet a necessary venture. As stated earlier in the presentation, coffee shops, as a great business venture as they are, do cause about $270 worth of environmental damage to their surrounding area. And after further research, it doesn't seem like Jumpin' Java has any type of composting or recycling program in place, which coffee grounds alone equal 23 million tons of waste per year around the globe. Without these programs in place, a coffee shop adds to much more unneeded waste than they need to produce.
The citizens living near the coffee plantations are greatly impacted by deforestation. Deforestation is the conversion of forest to an alternative non-forested land use. In our scenario, forests are being converted to agricultural land for the production of coffee beans. This deforestation is a large concern in the developing countries of the tropics, as it shrinks the size of the tropical forests, causes a loss of biodiversity, and enhances greenhouse gas emissions. The active deforestation is especially bad in the tropics, as one deforestation specialist, Professor Norman Myers, puts it. The annual destruction rates seem to accelerate further and could well double in another decade for tropical forests. The conversion to agricultural land can also displace native indigenous people who are forced to leave and find new places to live. West Michigan consumers would be impacted by knowing where their coffee comes from and the sustainability behind how that coffee came to be. Deforestation can positively influence climate change, which influences people locally and worldwide by increasing the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere. Deforestation contributes to global warming, which occurs from increased atmospheric conditions of greenhouse gases, leading to the net increase in the global mean temperature, as the forests are primary terrestrial sinks of carbon. Thus, deforestation disrupts the global carbon cycle, increasing the concentration of atmospheric carbon dioxide. Orse and Brown 1994 identified two main forces affecting deforestation, one of which is failure in the working of the economic systems to reflect the true value of the environment. Basically, many of the functions of tropical forests are not marketed and as such are ignored in decision making. Additionally, decisions to convert tropic forests are themselves encouraged by fiscal and other incentives. One way that Jumping Java has taken action and lessened the impacts of deforestation and carbon sequestration is by only getting coffee from Rainforest Alliance certified distributors. The Rainforest Alliance certification mandates that farmers must mitigate a purposeful forest destruction that occurred on their land, such as clearing land for coffee production. The Rainforest Alliance also promotes that farmers use a minimum of 40% shade cover on farms. One study found that the Rainforest Alliance certified producers have more trees per acre, more native species, and more tree layers than conventional farms. Jumping Java could also donate some of the proceeds from their coffee business to promote afforestation, which is tree planting in the tropics.